forgot my bottle.
I have Sprite. I'll let lemon in. Oh, God.
And we're back.
I barely sat down.
No, we were both sitting here, then we left, and then we came back. I had to get a bottle of water, and you were making copies, and so...
Making copies!
So, we're going to push pause because my microphone is way over there.
Is it even on? Is this thing on?
This thing is on.
Are you sure it's on?
I'm pretty sure it's on. Just got here yesterday.
Would you like to check?
That's on.
How does that mean you know that it's on?
This says it's on.
Would you like to?
Alright. Well, again, we're good. What did you do last time?
Yeah. Ding!
Alright.
Coming to you from 125 Carver in Waco, Texas, it's the Riverside Weekly. We hope your time with us today is thought-provoking, spiritually challenging, and a life-changing experience. Our discussions are fun, real, and at times very uncomfortable. We highly encourage all of our guests and listeners to like and subscribe, and please ring the bell. Now, here are your hosts, Pastor Cello and Pastor Mia.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It's Wednesday. Oh, horrible. No, that's a sad one.
Oh, it doesn't...
That's a sad one. You have to wait for that one to work.
And we're back, okay.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I know that it's been a long time, and last week we actually were talking about, do you remember? Do you remember?
Hold on, no.
Confidence.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah,
That's what I said.
lack of self-confidence.
Yeah.
And I actually had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to, like, clarify.
Clarify, elaborate on?
Yeah, but that's not going to... No, I can't.
Why?
Because today, you guys, he chose the topic, and so today...
You're not supposed to tell him that.
Well, I'm just saying that it's kind of scary for me, and it, like, hit me with a right punch. How do you do it? What is it? Ting? Where's the ting? I was like, what is happening? So because he chose the topic, you know me, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know much on the subject. And usually if he's got the subject, that means he's got the whole floor, like I did last week. So anyway.
I don't know if I know a lot about the subject.
Well, then let's talk about it. We're just going to start off right the bat. Again, right off the bat, let's just prequel with this. You do know that we are controversial.
From time to time.
From time to time. We talk about things that people frown upon, and we try to talk about things that no one wants. Huh?
Are real.
Are real, yeah. Real, raw, and uncomfortable. So here we go.
Unconventional perspective.
Yes, an unconventional perspective. With that being said, welcome to today's podcast where we are going to talk about Roe versus Wade, the decision of a lifetime, you guys. That's where you'd be like, oh no, wrong one. My bad. Sorry. That's the one I meant to say.
Okay.
Or this one. That would have been better, right? Okay, erase. Okay, start back. Okay, and we're back. So we're talking about Roe versus Wade today, and I think that that's a serious, uncomfortable, I don't know any other words, because some of you are probably going to turn this podcast off before we even get started because you're like, I don't want to hear about it no more. And that's fine. Whatever. Sometimes we're funny, sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're serious, sometimes we're raw, sometimes we're real, and some of you don't like that. So,
Well, I think we're real all the time. That's the problem.
well, yeah, and that's okay. Some people follow us for that exact reason, and I'm okay with that. And I know this guy here, he doesn't like some of those things, but this one, he's really not excited about it, but he's really ready to share. And, you know, he sometimes doesn't want to do the podcast, but I have to prod him and tell him, come on, this is a give and take. We are, what is it? What do we say? Our chemistry
It is give
works
and take.
well together.
She gives me stuff to do, and then it takes me forever time to do it.
There you go. So when he says he wants to do something, let's do it. Go.
Okay, so.
Tell me about it. I don't know.
Well.
Okay, first of all, let me clarify. I don't have Facebook, okay? Just end of story. I don't have cable, so we don't watch news. I don't know any news at all because I'm on a food truck. So, you know, there's that. Okay, now.
Well,
what happened?
I'll just say, for starters.
Okay.
I would say, one of the things that I very, very rarely do, and when I say very rarely, I mean like probably years between times that I actually do this.
Okay.
Which is, in my messages, I never preach, teach, share on what's going on in our social climate. Like,
Okay.
I have an agenda that I feel like God's given me, or that I feel led, or that I want to address. I have those things. The devil does not run our ministry. We're not influenced by outside cultures, outside things. So when we set forth what we're going to do, we stick to our guns and we share and talk about those things. When it comes to the podcast,
Texas Tech.
very rarely do we address directly what's going on politically, socially, the social climate, stuff like that. So we just kind of, it's not that we steer clear of it, we're afraid to mess with it, but we don't want part of my, I guess, pet peeve thing, whatever you want to call it, goal, is I don't want outside influences dictating what we talk about, what we don't talk about.
Okay.
So that's why I always like, you pick the topics. But kind of had a historical event a few days ago, so I don't know, tell me when you're watching this. So we had the overturning of the law in the Supreme Court. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's, number one, people are asking.
Okay.
I've had a few people ask, it wasn't a bunch, but I've had a few people ask me what my thoughts about it as a pastor, as a believer, as a man who has a wife, as a man who has daughters, granddaughters. You know, what's my perspective? What's my thought? And as I'm going through my Instagram, my Facebook, I'm looking at posts from churches. I'm looking at posts from pastors. I'm looking at posts from believers. And on the same time, I'm looking at posts from folks that are non-believers, people that don't go to church. And so I'm seeing both sides, but I don't think anybody's addressing what I call the elephant in the room. Like, I mean, and from a church's perspective, more importantly, because that's how I tend to line myself up with, is with the scriptures and with the word. And so for me, and the question is like, what do I think about that? That was the question. Is like, where do you stand on this? What are your thoughts on this being overturned? Excuse me. And I think for me, the biggest challenge that I have is not so much with the law being overturned, or liberals and socialists and Democrats and independents, taking a stance, and then the Republicans and Christians, believers taking a stance. My thing is that I think a lot of us within the church, within pastoral leadership, I think we're really overlooking the big picture when it comes to this type of situation. When you're looking at it from a global perspective, a political perspective, an agenda perspective, and then looking at it from that perspective, but looking at it through the lens of what the scriptures say, what the Bible says. And so,
Okay, first of all, I have to stop you right there.
okay,
Okay, call me dumb if you want, but I don't know what happened. And for those out there who don't know and don't have news and don't have Facebook, and
Okay, so
what happened? That's what I
in
need
the
to know.
70s, I was going to tell you, pull it up.
Okay.
You had Roe versus Wade, where abortion became illegal. Became legal.
Okay, I was like, what?
So abortion was illegal.
Okay.
The law passed that abortion was legal. So then you could get an abortion. So that's where abortion clinics come from, Planned Parenthood, that whole thing.
Okay.
Well, then this overturned that. The Supreme Court decision overturned that and said now they're going to put it in the state's hands, and abortion is once again illegal to certain degrees. Pregnancies, they list all the stuff. I don't know all the details, but so that's the big thing, is that they went from abortion being legal to it now being illegal. Various states, weeks, all those types of things. So the big upset, or the situation is that now women are not allowed to make a decision for themselves when it comes to having an abortion.
Okay.
Now, I want to just say right up front from the get-go, whether you're a believer or you're not believer, whether you go to church, you don't go to church, I believe that murder's wrong. I believe that murder is a sin, if you will. I believe that having an abortion, killing babies from conception till birth, or they're within weeks, I believe that's murder. I believe that life is in the womb. Like I get all that. I'm a strong believer. I'm a grandparent. I'm a pastor of a church, a leader, spiritual leader, all these things that support and say, I believe. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I agree with it. I agree that it's wrong. My problem with the church is, if I say my problem, my concern, I'll say that. My concern with the church is that I feel like the church is so focused on an agenda, so focused on a victory, so focused on having their way, that they're mandating, legalizing, supporting, having an entitlement that we as believers now have the right to tell people what they can and cannot do with their bodies.
Like the Roman Catholics.
Not necessarily Roman Catholics, but I'm just saying,
then go back to Caesar and that, because that time they did.
Explain
during
yourself.
that time.
What do you mean?
You had what was yours was Caesar's. What was yours, your body. If they walked in there to your house, they could take everything from you. They could make you do everything.
Well,
everything.
yeah. So you had basically, the ruling aspect. So or the lordship aspect.
Okay.
So in that, the church is rejoicing at the fact that this law was overturned because we're saving babies, which I support that. Like, I agree that anything that's going to help us save babies, I support. I do. But at the same time, I think the church may have it a little bit twisted in the sense of, by us supporting that law or being excited about that law and saying, well, God's moving on our behalf, I think we might have a little issue there scripturally. So when you go all the way back to Genesis, the whole reason that we have Genesis, the whole reason that we have Exodus, the books and Numbers, is the reason we have those books is because Moses, when they were killing babies, when the Egyptians were killing babies, Moses was taken, put in a basket, floated down the river, right? So at the very beginning of the history, we look at scriptural history, they're killing babies, right? So that it's there. So it's here then, or it was in culture and in the world then, and it's here today. Now, I'm not saying it's here to stay, but I am saying, like, you're going to have to deal with that because we live in a falling world, because we live in a world where the enemy, the devil, is Lord. He's taking control, dominion over the earth. So from that perspective, you're going to have that. So I think where we as the church, where we get confused is that we're so excited because this law passed, or this change of frame of thinking of law has changed. We're like, okay, now we're not going to allow it. I feel like we're being set up, for me, this is just me, conspiracy theory, whatever you want to look, however you want to perspective is, look at it. I feel like we're getting set up for what's coming to pass later in the scriptures, right? So I was watching a podcast the other day, and one of the guys he's a believer, like real good following, has an awesome podcast. You know, his statement was, he goes, well, it's finally about time that the United States is caught up with the rest of the world. And I'm going, wow. His thoughts, and this is what he said. He goes, most of the other countries, major countries on the globe have very, very strict abortion rights. And my thought was, that's not really a good thing because we just lined ourselves up with everybody else that wants to control everybody else.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said before. Rome.
Right. Yeah. So that's the thing. So on the one hand, you have believers, man, we're saving babies at what cost? Right. So for me, I'm not arguing like it's going to happen. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but I think if you're celebrating the fact that we're saving lives, I think you should step back and say, are we saving lives at the cost of our rights, giving up our rights to make decisions? Because I believe, this is just me, if you take the rights away from women, children are next, and then men are next. And then
we'll all be in camps, in cages, and it will all be the whole Auschwitz.
Right. Well, so now you get in this whole tribulation thing. I'm just saying that, like, from a believer's perspective, and I love what a pastor friend of mine said. I love what he said. He says, Jesus came to change hearts. He came to change hearts, not change laws. And when you think about it from a believer's perspective, that's really, really true, because when you think about what's happening, believers are excited about this law, and we're trying to change people's behavior. We're trying to change people's perspective. We're trying to change people's hearts, their minds, by changing a law. And it doesn't matter. It just goes all the way back to carrying guns, right? Guns don't kill people. People with guns kill people. And we have to have stricter gun laws. And I don't think it works, because we have gun laws already, and the people that want guns and not supposed to have them still have guns. So to me, it's not that you're going to stop abortion. You just made it illegal. So abortion.
So now they're going to go underground, behind your back, in wherever, and do the same thing. It's the same as you stopping your child from sneaking out of the house, nailing the window shut. Guess what? They go to the front door and they spit on the little, whatever it's called. What are those things that hold the door? Hinges. And so that it won't squeak. And then they go out. And then they stay out longer. And then they end up running away because you put those strict laws on them and didn't let them go to a party.
Oh, are we talking about somebody here?
I mean, we could be. I'm just saying.
My point being is that I feel like the church is being very naive in this aspect of not realizing that we have to really look. Like, I believe that abortion's wrong. Like, I do. But I don't believe that you can pray for abortion to end. I don't think that you can that you can pass laws to make abortion end. It's there. Like, this is the world that we live in. But what are we doing as a church to reach those individuals that are now upset with us because of the laws that changed? Yep. All we did really, in my opinion, we just pushed them further away.
Further away from God.
And it's harder for us to have that conversation, that dialogue. People do not change their hearts because of laws. People do not change their decisions because of law.
Laws are there to...
I'm just going to tell you right now, and if you know me, my congregation knows this, my leadership knows this, my board here at the church knows this, and they know this. If you know me really well enough, then you know this. And if you don't know me well enough, then now you know. There is a law in the state of Texas that says you have to wear a seatbelt. In the same state, mind you, you can ride a motorcycle without a helmet.
And without a seatbelt.
And without a seatbelt. I think the seatbelt law is idiotic. So, guess what I don't do? I don't really wear my seatbelt. And I can hear people, well, you're thinking about your grandchildren and your children and your wife. Like, look, you're right. Maybe it's just being a little, petty. But I'm not wearing my seatbelt. I remember about 4 years ago, I got pulled over, and the police officer said, I was like, what's the problem? The police officer's like, well, I pulled you over, sir, because you don't have a seatbelt on. I started laughing. I said, yes, I don't wear my seatbelt. And he says, driver's license on insurance, and says, well, I'm going to cite you a ticket. Or I'm going to cite you for not wearing your seatbelt. I said, fine. And so he handed me my ticket, and he asked me to put my seatbelt on. I said, why am I putting my seatbelt on? I got my ticket. And he's like, well, it's a state law. I said, listen, I pay this ticket fine about every 5 to 6 years. And it's worth it for me to pay this ticket every 5 to 6 years if I'm not wearing my seatbelt. And people that know me, they're like, you are crazy. The same thought process is going through those individuals about abortion. You can make all the laws you want, and I'm going to go get an abortion. Now, here's the part that I have that probably going to rub some folks the other way. I think it's also idiotic for individuals to claim that they want to have the right to do what they want with their bodies, but they don't want to suffer the consequences for when they do what they want with their bodies. Meaning
mental, emotional.
Well, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, like that whole thing. So, for me, if you're sleeping and having casual sex with somebody and you get pregnant, that's your responsibility. But you didn't get pregnant by yourself. That's only happened one time in Jesus. Okay, so you had somebody, you had a counterpart that was involved with that, right? So, for a woman to say that she has the right to make that decision is not really fair to the husband or to the father or to the person that you had sex with if they want to keep that child. Now you're taking their rights away as a parent or as a father, right? So what we want to do in our pro-feminist, our pro-choice decision, we want to be able to make choices, make decisions without any consequences. And we don't want to own up to the consequences, right? So we want to get an abortion. We want to do all these other things so that we can remove the consequences from our choices, never taking into consideration the unborn child or the father.
Yeah.
So we're at a very dangerous place right now in our culture and our society, especially within the church, because we need to be very careful on which side that we pick and what we're going to support. The Word of God, it tells us, it says, I set before you life and death. Choose life. I've looked through the scriptures from Genesis to Revelations, and not once have I seen God, Jesus, anybody in the scriptures say that you must bow down to Jesus. You must bow down to God. God himself does not even make us worship him. Jesus does not make us worship him. But yet we as believers feel the need that we have to tell people what they can and cannot do with their bodies. When and when they cannot drink. When and when they cannot smoke. When and when they can eat this or can't eat that or drink this or be with this or be over there or go here or do that. We've gotten so controlling with our agenda that we forgot how to love people. And that was the whole reason that Jesus came, so that we could love people. We could learn to love God, love Jesus, and love people as ourselves. And we do this without even thinking about it. So as you guys are out there celebrating and rejoicing that this law was overturned, just keep in mind that you might be setting yourself up for a really bad decision if you're not willing to admit that you want to control people's right to choose. You cannot choose for them. There are tons of people going to hell every day, whether you believe it or not, whether you believe in hell or not, all that. I'm just saying. I believe there are people that are going to hell every day. They choose to go to hell, period. And God allows them to make that choice. Yeah. But we as a country, we as voters, we as believers feel the right that we have the need to be able to make people do what we want them to do. The irony of all this, and I'm done on my rant on this podcast. We're going to just call this podcast The Rant.
Okay.
The irony of all this is that even though abortion is wrong, even though murder is wrong, even though those are evil acts, it's evil, it's wrong, those babies that are being aborted, they're still going to Jesus. They're still going to heaven. And changing the law is not going to keep that from happening. Yeah. And so I think we're caught up in the wrong thing. So if you're a pastor, I love you. If you're a church leader, I love you. I'm just saying, this is my 2 cents. I hardly ever, almost never do this, but I just feel like we're at a place in our culture, we're at a place in society, a time and a season that we really, as a church, we really need to reevaluate our thoughts, our perspectives, and our attitudes towards what's happening. Because whether we like it or not, we've literally just increased the safety of hundreds of millions of young ladies that are going to go to those doctors
In
that
the
are
back
in the
alley.
back alleys, in the makeshift clinics,
Yep.
hospitals,
Yep.
and they're going to go get these procedures done,
Yep.
and they're putting not themselves, not just those babies that they're aborting, but themselves at risk even more. So I'm not saying that I agree that abortion is right. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we need to reevaluate our thoughts and opinions through the scriptures and say, man, we just need to love. You're not going to pray abortion away. I don't care how hard you try. It's not going to happen. Well, your faith is not big enough. I don't have to have faith. I'm looking at the scriptures. It's not going to happen. We're asking for God to do something that he's not going to do. We're trying to make something happen that we want to happen, and that's called witchcraft. Just saying. So we really need to evaluate our perspective on what's going on in our society. Check yourself, check your word, check your scriptures, check your heart,
motives.
check your motives, because when these people that are upset with us because of this law, what we instead of building the bridge, we've just added a wall. And I think that we really need to think about our perspective, because as one pastor said to me the other day, you guys weren't saying this while Trump was in office and everybody was about Jesus and church and believing in all this. Like, that was a whole different tune now. So now you're the shoe's on the other foot, and now you're trying to have a different attitude. And I think it's
Two-sided, two-faced.
it's hypocritical scripturally.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think that we really, really, really need to evaluate what we say that we believe, who we're following, and I like what you said, our motives behind what we're saying and doing. So I mean, I just wanted to just kind of share that, because it's really tough out here, because for lack of a better description, man, y'all just made it really hard to be a disciple. It's more difficult to be a disciple. It's more difficult to be a believer. It's more difficult to share the gospel, the love of God, because as soon as they find out I'm a pastor, as soon as they find out I'm a believer, they assume automatically that I voted and supported the decision. And I'm just trying to love people. And as I said in my congregation and many other congregations and individuals at my church, here at Riverside, not my church, our church, my church, I'm just trying to get the liberal individual in my church that's sitting on the front row to communicate and love the Republican on the back row without upsetting the Democrat in the middle row.
What about the Baptists?
Well, the Baptists are on the back row. So my thoughts are this, and this is just, man, think about your perspective. Think about your attitude. Think about how you're communicating. Because even in the midst of everything that was going on in Egypt, killing babies, the Hebrews weren't trying to push the law to stop baby killing, right? Like it's always been going on. And I'm not saying to rejoice over that. Like, it's sad, it's evil, but I think as believers we're willing to compromise our freedom.
I was going to say not our faith, but definitely our freedom.
Yeah, we're willing to compromise our freedom, our daughters' freedoms, females' freedoms, and like I said, I conspiracy theorists or whatever, I think it's going to start with women. It's going to go to the children, and the men will be the last, and then we're not going to have the right to do some things, and we're going to start moving in that direction. It's going to happen regardless if we like it or not. I'm just saying, as a believer, as a churchgoer, as a follower of Christ.
Thanks for pushing us faster.
You probably should be thinking about your perspective and what you're going to do to reach those individuals that are completely and utterly disagreement with you.
Yeah.
That's the hard thing. I'm done. Any thoughts, comments, questions, or suggestions? You can email my wife, because
Don't email me, because it wasn't my topic, and you heard me, because I didn't even know. I mean, I heard about it, but I really, I don't like to give my opinion or my thoughts on it, because it takes me a long time to think about things, and usually I will say I'm not as spiritually awoke as he is. So I don't have anything. I mean, you heard me. I got in there and, gave you the... But I do want to say this. Shout out to my amazing parents. In the defense of my parents, I want to own up to the consequences of my actions. So, they did not do anything wrong. It was I and my sister who did things wrong. So, But that was because we were going against the grain. We were told we couldn't do it. And we've talked about this before on other podcasts before, is that the more you tell people they can't do something, they will want to do it. And we've talked about this with our kids, you know. Every time you told them they couldn't go outside, that's what they wanted. Or you tell them they couldn't have candy, that's what they wanted. You know, everyone. And you're telling these women and these young ladies and all of this that they can't have an abortion. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to do what you said they couldn't do, because they got to show you who's right.
Yep.
That's it. That's it. And all you did was just shove them further
away.
And I'm not saying that, you know, I don't know. It's kind of what you said before. You know, you can relate to people who have lost a parent. I haven't lost a parent, thank God. Not that that's bad for you. I'm just saying, thank God I haven't lost a parent. So I can't relate in that aspect. I haven't had an abortion, so I can't relate in that aspect. You know, so I don't know the mental aspects, the physical, the damage, you know, of any of that. But I know that I can pray with somebody who's had it, and I have multiple times, you know, not the same person multiple times, but over
multiple individuals.
Yeah, to multiple individuals in the years that we've been in ministry. And they just wanted love, and they want peace, you know, after they go through all that. So don't be out there bashing anyone. And you know, you can do what you're going to do and say what you're going to say, but it doesn't matter. You don't have the final say. The Bible has the final say. That's my 2 cents.
Yep.
Anyway, so if you've already turned off and you tried to come back on and now you're here, we're saying goodbye. But thanks if you stayed the entire time and got to hear our points and our, you know, what we had to say about it. And again, if you do have issues or concerns or anything like that, you can email my husband at cellolozano@hotmail.com.
And then it goes right into junk.
It does not.
Spam.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Thanks for always being there, and thanks for putting up with us even when we might make you feel uncomfortable. It is the uncomfortable that causes growth. You cannot have growth without that.
Exactly. And I will say this as we shut down, wrap up. It's okay if you disagree with me.
Yeah, it's
and
okay to disagree.
I'm not even going to be mad at you.
We disagree all the time, but we still here. We're still friends.
I'm not even going to be mad at you. So
No.
if you disagree with me, hit me up. We can talk it out. I will promise, and I give you my word, I will not try to change your mind. But I'd love to hear from you. I invite conversations to talk about things that we really don't want to talk about inside the church.
Yeah.
So
True. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Riverside Weekly. Download the Riverside Waco app to stay connected and follow us on all social media sites at the Riverside Waco. This podcast is made possible by the givers of Riverside Community Church. Production and engineering provided by Capital G and RTV in Waco, Texas.